salsa, whose powerful voice and shimmering smile electrified Latin music for decades, was mourned with tears and tributes in her hometown of New York and by Miami's Cuban exile community. Cruz died aged 77 in her home in New Jersey, right across the Hudson River from New York City. New Yorkers felt the loss of the legendary Cuban-born Cruz, with several fans grieving outside the Frankie Campbell Funeral Home on Madison Avenue. Ralph Mercado, who owned RWM Management in 1972, signed Celia on, becoming her mentor for 25 of her most successful years. Mercado spoke of her contribution to the world of music and her special place in people's hearts, saying she was such a great person, a woman of words, a woman of good feelings, and someone who was always there if you needed her. Cruz left Cuba as a star in 1960 and became not just a grande dame of the Latin music scene, whose career reached into her later years, but an iconic figure for Cuban Americans. In Little Havana, Miami, the heart of Cuba's exiled community in the United States, mourners laid flowers at a small stone marked with the singer's name. Elderly patrons focused on nostalgia for Cuban things past and recalled a voice with which they grew up. The Freedom Tower on Miami's bayfront, an ornate building where Cuban migrants were processed during the first wave of exiles after Fidel Castro's 1959 revolution, flew its Cuban flag at half-staff and planned for her funeral. Despite worldwide mourning, the news of Celia Cruz's death received only minor mention in her native Cuba's government newspaper and was ignored by state television. Cruz's music was banned in Cuba after she left the island 4 decades ago. Her standing in the exiles and the fact she had often said she would return to sing only in a free Cuba made her a thorn in the side of Castro's government. But despite this, the death of Celia Cruz reached her native island, where residents, tourists, and fellow musicians like Vincent Mora Melanes reacted badly. She knew how to take Cuban music to the rest of the world, giving it that flavor, as she would say, that sugar. Havana's Communist Party newspaper Granma published a 2-paragraph obituary noting she was an important Cuban performer who popularized their music in the United States. They added that over the last 4 decades, she was systematically active in campaigns against the Cuban Revolution, for which she was utilized as an icon by the counter-revolutionary enclave in southern Florida. Cruz grew up in poverty in Havana, Cuba, where she lived with siblings and cousins from her birth until her exile. At her family home, her relatives had set up a small shrine for Cruz as her cousins and family expressed their sadness. Celia once said she wanted to die on stage, but not on any Colombia stage, because Colombia had suffered enough. Celia had numerous ties with Mexico City. In 1962, she married Pedro Knight in the Blaquita Theater in that city, although she and her husband settled in New York after living in Mexico for 3 years. The Grammy Award winner recorded more than 70 albums during her long career and never returned to Cuba.
Damas y caballeros, excuse my English, but I love you.